Rewritten! Stephen appeared at Homeworld in a beam of pale blue light, landing on the circular crystalline disk of the Homeworld warp, the teleportation device set across all the different planets to connect them. It was much brighter there than it was on Earth, the jewel-encrusted ground glowing from the reflection of the stars and the suns that surrounded the massive planet. There wasn't really a day-night cycle on Homeworld, it was always just bright. He felt the extra gravity of the larger planet pulling down on him the instant that the warp stream let go. Luckily, it wasn't too bad, just noticeable. He would have normally tried to magic his density a bit lighter so it would feel normal, but he was still nervous about using his powers if it wasn't necessary. He could walk a little slower for now. Stephen stared around at the spiraling white towers and the looming buildings and crisscrossing highways, all neat and orderly and perfectly in line, having been organized by a perfectionist, White Diamond. He could notice a few changes since he had last visited. There were tufts of greenery here and there, and the other diamond's colors, blue, yellow, and pink, were shown in tapestries, rather than it all being mostly white. There were also some bad things that had changed. He didn't see many gems bustling about. It felt kind of empty, the activity restrained inside the buildings, not much hover bubbles moving around the highways. And alongside that, he could see a considerable amount of graffiti covering the walls, which were being cleaned up by various gem workers, the only people outside from what he could see. He peered at a closer patch of the neon letters, realizing a pattern to them. They were being scrubbed off, but he could see that there was a repeated symbol to them, a red circle with a water drop in the middle, surrounded by a pair of blue wings. Uneasiness wrinkled through him. That reminded him of someone he'd almost forgotten about. Was something going on here? Stephen didn't have much time to begin solving that mystery. He had his own problems to solve first, to make sure that he didn't cause any more. So Stephen turned away from the graffiti, planning to walk towards the palace to try and find his way to the diamonds. "Oh, Stephen, we were just coming to visit!" He heard a high-pitched voice behind him. He glanced to where it was and spotted 3 thin gems skipping up to him. They were all wearing frilly outfits, all of them pointy and slender, almost like fairies, each with a nearly identical jewel embedded into their skin. It was the diamond's old pearls, yellow pearl, blue pearl, and volleyball. Yeah, he hadn't been very creative with names whenever he met the last one. Yellow pearl was more formal than the other two, a proud puff to her chest where her gem was, with her nose upturned and her eyes smirking. Blue pearl was calmer and moved like silk, her bangs long and covering her eyes like powder blue feathers. Her gem was also on her chest, though she tended to hide it shyly instead of presenting its shine like yellow pearl did. Volleyball was a pale pink, cheerfully quiet but not as reclusive as blue pearl. Her gem was on her stomach, just like Stephen, and her hair was curled up into 2 rose-shaped buns on either side of her head. He tried to avoid looking at her broken eye. It was cracked like dropped china, the most noticeable scar on her face. Even though he wasn't staring, he still noticed that the fractures looked a bit smaller than before, more contained to the socket rather than splintering out across her face. So he guessed that was good. The 3 gems surrounded him, chirping happily with their greetings and shaking his hand one at a time. The diamond's pearls were one of the more happier gems after Stephen had convinced the diamonds to stop their horrible ruling techniques. They used to be the diamond's servants and slaves, treated like objects, but now they were free. And at the moment, they seemed to be very happy to meet their savior again. "Hello, Stephen. It's so nice to see you again. How have you been?" He struggled to regain his sense of communication. He shook out his vocal cords, clearing his throat, and began shakily, I'm fine, thanks. Nice to see you guys, too." He glanced around at the nearly empty street. Their voices were carrying because they were the only people here, other than the graffiti scrubbers. "How has Homeworld been? Are the diamonds doing well?" he asked. "Oh, it's been just marvelous," Yellow Pearl chimed. "It's so satisfying to see the annoyed look on Yellow Diamond's face when I tell her I'm too busy right now." "Blue Diamond misses you, but she mostly just mopes around. But at least this time she's not using her powers on me," Blue Pearl whispered. Volleyball nodded and said, "Yes, their powers aren't being used on us at all anymore. White stopped mind-controlling me, so I'm just happy about that. She's a nice person otherwise." The pearls were still staying with the diamonds while they figured out what they wanted to do on Earth, since they didn't really know what else to do with themselves. These statements concerned him a little, but the gleaming smile on the pearls' faces helped him try to believe that they weren't complaints. "So, what's with the graffiti?" Stephen questioned, gesturing to one of the walls that hadn't been scrubbed yet. The words were written in gem, the alien's language that he was yet to be fluent in. Yellow Pearl's expression soured, and she replied, "Oh, right. There's some rebels going around and talking about getting rid of you and the Diamond Authority. They're led by some permafusion named Bluebird." Stephen gasped. He knew Bluebird. This was where Aquamarine and Eyeball have been? "But it's all fine, really," Volleyball nodded. "The diamonds won't have any of it. Bluebird is mostly just writing nasty words about you, nothing to be bothered by." Despite the Pearl's nonchalant brush-off of Bluebird, Stephen still felt uneasy. If they were causing trouble again, he might need to be ready to fix it. Bluebird Azurite was a permafusion between Aquamarine and Eyeball. Well, her name was Ruby, but Stephen just called her Eyeball. Both of the gems hated him and had fused to try and kill him a few weeks ago. They'd failed and flown off somewhere, vowing to be back again. He hadn't seen them since then, but if they were on Homeworld trying to convince gems to rebel again, this could be a problem. He wondered how worried he should be about this. It was then that he remembered a fourth person that should be here, Spinel. Spinel was his mother's old playmate. She was abandoned by her and had come to Earth to destroy him and everything on the planet's surface with a giant injector drill filled with biotoxin. But luckily, he was able to talk her down and convince her to make a new life. After that incident, Spinel had been taken back to the Diamonds, who would have enough time on their hands to give her their attention. It helped calm the constant attempts to get him to live on Homeworld with them, since they had someone else to keep them company. He had been too busy since she left and hadn't gotten to check up on her to see if she was settling down well. But he hadn't heard anything from her, so he was assuming that everything was fine. "Where's Spinel?" Stephen asked, glancing behind them as if the bouncing gem would be cartwheeling in their direction already. "Oh, she's in timeout." Volleyball waved a thin hand. "She'll probably be back tomorrow." Wait, what? Timeout? Where? Stephen felt every inch of his skin prickle up in alarm. "In the Dark Time Tower." Volleyball pointed upwards. He followed her gaze to an angular black spire, sticking out from the bright landscape like a broken arm. He remembered being left in there 2 years ago, whenever the Diamond still thought of him as Pink Diamond for punishment. "Why?" Stephen gasped. "She was being terribly rude to Blue Diamond yesterday. Maybe she'll finally learn her lesson this time." Volleyball shrugged, as if it was no big deal. But it was a big deal. At least it would be for Spinel. She couldn't be left alone, not so soon after what Pink did to her. The poor Pink gem had been ordered to wait for Pink to come back inside of a garden. She stood there for 6,000 years straight before discovering that Pink had lied to her and left her to rot away. She had horrible anxiety of being left alone again, so if she was left in that dark tower all by herself for days on end... Stephen's attention immediately jumped from his own problem to Spinel's. I have to go get her!" Stephen yelled. He began to run in the direction of the Dark Time Tower before he was held back by Volleyball's hand. "Wait, why?" she asked. "Spinel's in timeout. Diamond's orders." "Yeah, well, I'm a Diamond too, and I say that she absolutely cannot be left alone again, and I'm getting her out." Stephen snapped, throwing her hand off and racing towards the crystalline streets as fast as he could push himself to go. Blue Pearl and Yellow Pearl stayed, staring at Stephen's retreat in confusion, but Volleyball began to sprint after him, calling something about how he had to ask somebody else to make sure that the other Diamonds were okay with it. He didn't pay attention to her at all. There was no time for that. And obviously, not everything was fine on Homeworld.